Good morning, good afternoon, and good day wherever you may be joining us from. Welcome to another edition of the Digital Download, the longest running weekly business talk show on LinkedIn Live, now globally syndicated on TuneIn Radio through IBGR, the world's #1 business talk, news, and strategy radio network. Today, we are talking about positioning and selling luxury brands. We have a special guest, Elizabeth Solaru, to help us with the discussion. CEO of Diversity in Luxury, Elizabeth's work empowers brands to craft compelling strategies that resonate with a diverse range of high-end clientele. But before we bring Elizabeth on, let's go around and introduce everyone. And while we're doing that, why don't you in the audience reach out to a friend, ping them, and have them join us. We strive to make the digital download an interactive experience, and audience participation is highly encouraged. All right, with that, Tim, would you kick us off, please?
Welcome, everybody. My name's Tim Hughes. I'm the CEO and co-founder of DLA Ignite, and I am the famous for writing the book Social Selling Techniques to Influence Buyers and Changemakers.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Adam.
Hi, everybody. I never normally show up to this intro bit with props. So today I have got props. So Tim is famous for writing this book, and before it, the first edition, this book. Rob is famous for writing this book, and I'm famous for writing this book and this book with Tim. So all things considered, I believe Elizabeth is an author as well. So there are all sorts of. So Bertrand,
no pressure.
Yeah, you need to write a book, my friend.
And here's the beauty, Bertrand. You can write it in French, so I won't know anything that it says.
Yeah.
Welcome, Adam. Thank you for that. Bertrand.
Yeah, hi, everybody. My name is Bertrand Godillot. I am the founder and managing partner of Odysseus & Co. We work with customers to generate more ICP conversations. And I brought a book with me today. And that's to do with what is it that you should be doing with idiots. And that applies, that obviously, sometimes applies to me, but not so often. I'm delighted to be here.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And myself, I'm Rob Durant, founder of Flywheel Results. We help startups scale. And I am a proud DLA Ignite partner. Okay, as I said, this week on the Digital Download, we'll speak with Elizabeth Solaru. Elizabeth is a luxury business strategist and author of The Luxpreneur: How to Start and Build a Successful Luxury Brand. Let's bring her on. Elizabeth, welcome.
Elizabeth.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I'm really, really delighted to be here.
Elizabeth, by the side of you, there's a pile of books.
Yes.
Could you just pick one up and could we just see it?
Yes.
Is that your book?
That's my book. That's my new book called The Luxpreneur.
Hold it up so we can all see it. That's it. Brilliant.
Excellent.
Well done, you.
Thank you. Thank you. My new baby.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Elizabeth, let's start by having you tell us a little bit more about you, your background, and what led you to where you are today.
Oh, okay. So potted history, ex-scientist. I used to be a microbiologist. I worked with the NHS for about 13 years. Then I left, did an MBA, became a headhunter, and I worked in the city for a number of years. I recruited chief execs, chairmen, private, public sector, charity sector, and I had a lot of fun. And then 2008, the market tanked, as we all know, and I decided to fulfill a childhood dream, and that was to open a cake shop. And I opened the cake shop, and before you knew it, I found myself making cakes for royalty, many royal families around the world, billionaires. I was very lucky. A lot of people came to London. So I was able to work with lots and lots of luxury clients across different cultures. And before I knew it, I got flown out to make cakes in a number of countries. I was delivering cakes all over Europe, Africa, India, America, etc. And then COVID hit, as it does. But before then, while I was doing the cakes, I usually got invited as a speaker to talk about luxury clients being my specialty, because I've always maintained that there are different types of luxury clients. And that's what really has led me to writing my book and to starting my other business.
Fantastic. Thank you for that. So, Elizabeth, let's start with a foundational question. What are the key factors that drive a luxury purchase?
Oh, okay. There's a long answer and there's the short answer.
We have an hour.
Okay. The short answer is emotion, but that looks different in different types of luxury clients. So what do I mean? So we all know the famous meme of Ozzy Osbourne and King Charles. That's been circulating for a few years. They've both been married. They're both born in the same year. They both live in castles. They're both white men, etc., etc. However, they represent different types of luxury clients. Can a brand sell to both of them? Absolutely. But the brand needs to tap into what it is that emotion looks like in both of them. So for somebody like King Charles, I call him a comfort first, risk averse, security conscious. And Ozzy Osbourne, on the other hand, he's an innovator, trendsetter. He's done things with bats that many of us can only dream of. So they're different when it comes to the psychographics. And I think that is the difference. That is how, that is what the emotion and the motivation to buy luxury looks like in different types of luxury clients.
I love that explanation. Myself, I teach intro to marketing at Northeastern University. And one of the things that we talk about is demographics and psychographics. And you just gave a brilliant example of the difference. Demographically, those two people look identical.
Yeah.
Psychographically, they behave completely differently. And as a marketer, as an entrepreneur, as a salesperson, you need to recognize that. And you need to address the particulars of each separately. So thank you for that. I'm going to find that clip and send it to my students. So what are the distinct types of luxury clients and how do they differ?
Okay. In my book, I speak about 8 types. And off the top of my head, I can probably remember about 5 or 6. Now, the easy two to remember are the millennials and Gen Zs. And that's because for the first time, they're behaving differently towards luxury than the other groups have. Because in the past, it was all about luxury telling us, this is how you, I don't know, eat caviar. This is how you drink your champagne. This is how it's chilled, etc. But the Gen Zs are saying, what rule book? Tossed out the rule book. The millennials are saying, actually, Gen Zs are saying, we're writing our own rule book. Millennials are saying, we don't care about the rule book. So the other types, in my mind, I mentioned earlier, King Charles, he would be what I call the comfort first, security conscious, security risk averse. Then you've got what I call only the best. So they only want something that represents the best in class. That's not because they're, again, some people might say, oh my God, old money, they behave a certain way. No, it's not necessarily due to old money. It's more as a signifier that I've made it, I've worked hard for my money, and I deserve the best. And rightly so, because I say we should be grateful to that type of client in luxury because they keep us in business. Then you've got the aspirationals. The aspirational class, they're all about having heroes, having people they emulate. They are what I call the only the best that haven't quite grown up yet. So they are aiming to become only the best or some other type in that category. Then you've got another type, who are my favorites actually, because they dictate and determine the culture of luxury to a certain extent. I call them the aesthetes. So it's all to do with how they see things. So it's not necessarily just the fashionistas. You can even have people that do food. It could be music. It could be words. People who organize and see the world via how things look and how things fit into their world. So, and they don't particularly care about labels as such, as long as that label fits into their aesthetic. And then you've got what I call the innovator, trendsetter. So that would be somebody like Ozzy Osbourne, who they march to their own drum beat, they do their own thing. However, the funny thing is their friends tend to be people like the comfort first, because both of them have something to gain from each other. So the innovator trendsetter, they like the sense of security, and the comfort first, they like the innovator trendsetter because they can live vicariously through them. And then the last category are the ethically conscious luxury consumers. So they would they wear big brands as well as little known brands, but they would make a conscious effort to put the little known brand on the map, as long as they meet the criteria of ethical consumerism or sustainability, etc. Now, I think that category, and I could be somewhat controversial here, the nature of luxury means they're producing new stuff all the time. So if you're truly, truly sustainable and ethical, you shouldn't be buying new stuff all the time. But that's all I have to. But then they keep luxury in check because they make us think deeply about greenwashing and some of the fancy things that luxury does to make it seem ethical. And yeah, those are the different types.
As they fly in their private jets.
Exactly.
So an interesting thing about the world of luxury is that it seems like it's expanding exponentially. Now, maybe it's driven by social media and my glimpses into your lifestyle of your yacht and your room full of expensive watches or whatever it may be. But it does strike me that there seem to be an awful lot of people spending $1,000 on a sweater, which seems very much at odds with much of what's going on in the world at the moment. So is this a shift? Are we seeing a polarization of spend and acceptance of high quality, high cost items in the marketplace? Or is it just more apparent now because people get platforms to talk about this stuff?
The question is a great one because it's a yes and no answer. So if you look at the data, the luxury market apparently is worth $1.4 trillion or pounds. And yet Bain & Co. tell us that, yes, the market is, a lot. However, luxury has actually lost 50 million people. 50 million consumers have been lost because many are jaded, many don't just want to spend. Many are rethinking, and also luxury brands are failing to deliver. So the quality for some of them is not that great, and yet the prices keep going up and up and up. And to your point, yes, there's a lot more exposure on social media. I know TikTok, for example, there's a luxury TikTok, and it's all about gawping and looking at all these people living these lavish lifestyles. So there's something around things being a bit more apparent or obvious. It's been now brought to our consciousness. But on the other hand, the data is telling us that luxury is actually flatlining at the moment. But some brands are still holding strong and are still doing really, really well despite the economy.
Yeah, so I guess that if 15 million people that did buy luxury brands are no longer buying luxury brands, we've got fewer people each spending more money in that sector. And again, we all sort of scroll Instagram or whatever, and often I see pictures of people buying handbags or watches or whatever it may be, where they're spending £30,000 on a. In fact, Tim and I met somebody that had just flown to LA to spend £30,000 on a Kelly bag. And these people have got a wardrobe full of these things in many instances. So they're and I think again, often some of these ultra luxury brands, you only get to come and buy my products if you are already an existing customer and have bought many of my products before. So it seems to be becoming like a very, very much a gated community almost.
That's again another brilliant point. I know the brand you're talking about. They do a Birkin or a Kelly, and this is the folklore or the legend that they've built around their products. So number one, extremely controlled scarcity. So you can't just walk in and get a bag. You've got to be on the waiting list for 2 years. You have an appointed a sales assistant or sales executive that helps you every time, so they know what you like, what you don't like, the colors that you like, etc., etc. And then after 2 years, if they think you've spent enough with them, then they might deign to present a bag, and it might not even be the color or what, but then you've got to snap it up. But people who are buying are not stupid. That's because if you manage to get a handbag and you walk out the store, the value goes up. The value automatically doubles, and then you can go round the back and resell that. Give it to a resale person. They will sell it on for you. You get some money. They make some money, and then you can go back and either get a bag straight away or go on the waiting list. So a lot of people are now buying those bags as investments, rightly or wrongly. It's not, the bags are now being treated like art in some cases. Can't open them, got to be in the box, etc., etc., etc. So this particular brand, they literally weathered the storm of the economic difficulty that we're experiencing right now. Having said that, something interesting is happening. A tiny wrinkle, and I think it can become a big tear. 3 people are suing this brand in America because they feel that they have breached some sort of, I don't know if it's antitrust or competition law, and they feel that they shouldn't be controlling their products or making people spend or coercing people to spend before buying their products. So 3 women are now suing this brand for the right to buy a handbag. And that is interesting. Now, people laugh at the lawsuit. However, this is a matter of law. Can these women prove, have they got the receipts? So I think it's going to be interesting because that might open the floodgates to a couple of other things.
Mm.
So how can a business position themselves to attract the right buyers?
Another great question. So in my book, I talk about the 5 pillars of a luxury brand. And the reason I kind of went into the book was because there are loads of luxury business books written by professors and analysts and experts or people who have worked for really big brands, but there's not really anything written from the perspective of a founder. So if you're like me and you start with £40 and a secondhand mixer, how do you then end up selling to royalty? So I looked at 5 pillars, and I'm not going to bore you with all of them, but central to all the pillars, in my view, is storytelling, perception, and your business model. And I've got craftsmanship, and I've got something else, which I can't remember at this minute. So if you look at storytelling, when people walk into Chanel, nobody tells you that, oh, Coco Chanel was dumped in an orphanage when she was 10 and abandoned by her dad, and she learned to sew, from the nuns, etc., etc. They talk about the fact that she's invented the little black dress. They talk about the fact that the perfume number 5 was a 5th bottle that she smelled, etc. So the story builds and builds and builds. And what that does is actually give people the idea and the sense of building their story, the story of her in their head, whether true or not. So you need to be able to tell your story in such a way that people see themselves in your brand. It's that emotional resonance. If there's no emotional resonance, what's the point? I give the example of a jar of peanut butter in Tesco's. It's a jar of peanut butter. But if you take the same jar and you position it elsewhere, say one of the famous stores in London, and you tell a story of how these peanuts are grown on a special terroir, handpicked by virgins at 5 a.m. and shelled in an exquisite way, and you build and build, and you talk about the jar, and only 100 are going to be produced, etc., etc. Before you know it, you've got a luxury brand. That is, if you tell the story right, and if the product and you can prove that the craftsmanship and the product is excellent. Also, there's something around the business model that you choose. So you may choose to price, because price is a signifier. Just because it's expensive doesn't mean it's luxury. But by the very nature of luxury, the price will be high and very expensive. So again, price. How have you positioned your pricing? Is it on the upper end? Is it in the middle, or is it at the lower end? So again, these are some of the things that luxury, that a brand needs to have, in my view, to be considered luxury.
I'm curious. I would presume many luxury sellers do not come from a background that affords luxury. So how can one think like your ideal client in order to sell to your ideal client?
Okay, so in order to think like them, again, I was particularly lucky. I've been exposed to a number of these clients when I was a headhunter, and then when I started selling cakes, which again, the barrier to entry for selling cakes is really low. Anyone can bake. You have a half decent oven, you've got the ingredients, you can bake. But then I realized it wasn't just about that. It was about, okay, where's the best place to find these people? So I can only share my experience. I did a couple of things, simple networking. So networking is key. Second thing is to read what they read, or go where they go. So read what they read. What do I mean by that? A simple thing. So for example, if you can find a journalist that writes about the rich and famous, follow that journalist, because you know the content is going to be about people. Being an ex-scientist, I love reading psychology magazines, sociology, etc. That gives you an idea or a picture of what drives people and how people behave. And then another thing that I did is to talk to people who serve ultra high net worth people. So the gatekeepers, for example, I mentioned earlier, one type of luxury client, which is the comfort first, they are more likely to have gatekeepers. So you can't just get to them. It's got to be someone who knows someone. It's got to be by referral. So get to know the gatekeepers. That does wonders, because you get to learn what they like, what they don't like, and who are the gatekeepers. Easy gatekeepers are people who run family offices on behalf of their clients, or people who run concierge services, because they're in contact with clients and they know client habits all the time.
All right, Elizabeth, just a question. Obviously, and you described it, luxury goes through very high quality products, at least that's the expectation, but also through an exclusive experience. And I'm just wondering, how is it possible to generate exclusive experiences in the digital age?
Oh, that's another great question. Now that is where luxury is having a bit of difficulty right now, because it's like that personal touch versus online. So that, but what I would suggest is there are certain platforms that seem to be doing it really well. So a platform that, and again, this is backed by data, they seem to be doing well, selling, etc., etc. And one thing I've noticed about this particular platform is that the chief executive is not just a chief exec. When he needs to be a salesperson, he's a salesperson. When he needs to be a chief exec, he's a chief exec. So My Teresa does it really, really well. They seem to have married the experience part with the digital part. Another chief exec of a brand, the brand that sells Kelly's, but he's based in New York. And what he does is that he actually said that 60% of their products are sold online. So Hermes does really good online experience. But what he also does is that every Christmas, every weekend, he works in their flagship store in New York. But nobody knows that he's the chief exec because he's just there as a sales assistant. So again, this is why he's able to then talk to clients, feedback, and then have a really good digital platform. So those are two examples that I know of that seem to be doing marrying of the digital with the personal really, really well.
And I guess that is for incumbent brands, we could say, where I can understand that this is a true challenge because it's a change in practice. But what do you think that the barrier of entry into this market has actually lowered because of the digital capabilities? You see what I mean? So that all of a sudden you could see someone coming from nowhere, mastering networking, and hit the roof.
Absolutely. I think it's a yes and no. In certain luxury categories, no, because you still need to have a shed load of money and connections. But for certain things, the answer is a yes. So a brand like, for example, Jacquemus, I don't know how you pronounce it properly, Jacquemus, they, again, he set it up in honor of his mom, probably 2009, something like that. And he is doing phenomenally well because he knows his audience, they're Gen Zs. His mission, his vision aligns with a lot of their values. So he seems to be doing amazing things. And I think he's definitely one of the brands to watch for 2025 because he's doing incredible stuff. So for example, for the London launch of the shop, he invited everyone to come to the shop for a cup of tea. And then he used the least likely TikToker that people didn't expect, everyone's favorite auntie on TikTok. All she does is video herself with buses. It was such a weird, pairing. Everyone was like, oh my God, we love this brand because the brand seems to understand and really capture the zeitgeist of their client. So yes, there are, and the one thing about coming in with nothing to lose is that I've seen some really young kids just literally come in, go for it and make a go of it because they've got agility on their side. They make the decisions. They're not waiting for corporate to, send me the brand guidelines or whatever. They can make the mistake. And also if the mistake is huge, it's huge. If they get canceled, they'll come up again. But a big brand is too much of a risk. So I think this is where luxury is getting exciting nowadays because you now have that flexibility due to the digital age that we didn't have maybe 20 years ago. So this for me is an exciting space. And another thing I'm going to mention as well is culture, because all of a sudden there's like a resurgence of people taking pride in their own culture. And people going back to roots and that sort of thing. Again, it's making the luxury space very, very exciting.
Okay, I've got an interesting question, stroke challenge, and you might turn around and say, "Don't be such an idiot." You wouldn't be the first, as these guys.
You are allowed to say that.
Yeah. So now these are all French brands, because obviously Bertrand is French. So
Thank you for
we
that.
get
Yes.
that Hermes, Chanel,
Yes.
LVMH, Chateau Petrus, Dior, Cartier, Bugatti are all French brands. They're all at the very top, at the very pinnacle of the luxury world. And when we think about luxury brands, you know, whether or not it's French brands like that, or it's Rolex or BMW or Aston Martin or whatever it may be, all of those are B2C brands. They're consumer brands and they're selling to the heart rather than the head. We operate exclusively in the business to business space. Now, in this space, there are most there are not many brands. Most businesses are fit for purpose. They do a job, and you're selling to somebody's head rather than their heart. There may be some snobbery involved. You know, no one ever gets fired for buying IBM, or I'm going to engage McKinsey as our consultants because they are recognized as being the best. Whether they are or not is irrelevant here. They're recognized as being the best. But none of these B2B operators, us included, has been able to become a luxury business to business brand. So we are really expensive for what we do. We are exceptional value and we're better than anyone else in the marketplace. And we sell based on the fact that we provide a better return on investment and better results than anyone else that operates in this space. But I still wouldn't say that we consider ourselves to be a luxury brand. So how do we, or any other business in the B2B space, position themselves as a luxury brand where people want to buy from us because we have the right logo, because we are the choice of royalty? Is that a possibility? Is that something that businesses can do?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, because when you were talking, I'm reminded of investment houses and banks that don't necessarily they're not B2C, but there are certain investment banks and banks that are B2B, and they're considered luxury. Because when you were talking, I'm thinking, but why not? Why wouldn't you consider yourself luxury? Because if it's about because I think, like you said, you're looking at results. So we deliver results. We're amazing at delivering results, right? But luxury is not just about results. Yes, a handbag's a handbag. A handbag's a bit of leather, to be honest with you. That's been dyed. It might be crafted by these incredible craftsmen who've been doing it for 700 years. That's great. But ultimately, so you saying, oh, you know, we deliver results is like you're reducing what you do to we get X for you. But if you then break it down and look at the process, the hand holding, the telling, the preventing clients from being idiots, or you know, you've got to save them from themselves. There's a lot that goes into it that can be romanticized, that can be a heart thing, that can be deemed as luxury. And you can get the right logo. Anyone can get the right logo. And like I said, it's a story that you tell yourself about your brand. So if you've determined, oh, because we're B2B, we're not luxury, then great. But if you do the logo, the swishy brochure, the getting people to see 10 people before they can see you, the thing is, we're all capable of setting up these processes. But my question is, do you really want to, if you are getting the money?
Well, my question was not
you?
Yeah, I mean, my question was not just about us. My question was about B2B brands generally.
Yeah.
You know, because I think that you know, we all, to a greater or lesser extent, wake up in the night in a sweat thinking about that new pair of shoes or that new handbag or that new car or whatever it is, the dream thing that we're about to acquire. And I wonder whether people do buy in the same way, or can buy in the same way in the B2B space, where it's very much a fact driven. Clearly there's relationship and personality and everything in it as well, but it's often largely a fact driven purchase. And the idea of creating luxury B2B brands is not something which is immediately apparent in the marketplace. And I was just wondering whether or not this was something that was because it isn't possible or just because nobody's bothered yet.
I think it's possible, and I think that's an interesting challenge. And I think this is the kind of scenario where I would love to create something just for the heck of it, even if it doesn't exist. Let's think of a service that doesn't exist and let's create it together. So let's think of a B2B. I don't know what kind of B2B do you have in mind? Let's create something right now. I think that's a challenge.
So picking up on this, though, is a crucial element scarcity? Because with luxury, those bags, only a few bags are made relative to the number of people that want them. With software, I have an infinite number of clients that I can sell to and an infinite number of software licenses I can deliver. Now, B2B services, time is finite. So is that what we're talking about here? Does it need to be a service or something else that is driven by scarcity? Is luxury about scarcity, or is there more to it?
It's partly scarcity, it's partly rarity, but it's not the whole. And I think that access to you, for example, yes, you've got a lot of software that you can license to multiple people, but you can also create bespoke software per client. Again, I don't know. I don't believe there should be a ceiling, to be honest with you, because one of the exercises I give some of the people I coach is go away and create £1 million product, a £10 million product, and a £100 million product. Let's see what we can break in terms of our mind barrier. For example, with your software, you might say, okay, the software is a basic product, but maybe it should be delivered to the client by, maybe not online, but maybe somebody should go around to their offices and have it delivered by a supermodel. I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud, but because at the end of the day, what luxury is sometimes is the whistle and the bells. It's not necessarily the core product. It's all the extras that they tag on top of it, because a core product is a core product. You know, a handbag is a handbag. But it's what it represents to the person. So if, for example, you get a handbag and it makes you feel like you finally belong to a certain club, you can create software where there's only 2 people in the world who has this software. And I think you might think, okay, but with the way things are, somebody might develop better software. To be honest, that's irrelevant. I'm sure there are better constructed handbags out there, but it's about creating that particular brand around what you've done and saying, I'm sticking my name to this. This is a one of a kind. This is the only one of its type, blah, 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 blah. Because a little bit of luxury is also about hype. And it's not just about being factual. Oh, this is a product, and you put your stuff in it and you lug it around. Again, when Hermes created the travel trunk, it wasn't rocket science. It was a fact that he noticed that a lot of trunks had rounded edges, you know, that the curve on top. So he said, oh, how about we make it flat? Boom, there it was. And there were other trunk makers making trunks, but he just put his logo all over his. And all of a sudden, you're buying an LV trunk. So again, you know, think about your software. Is there something you can do to it? Is there, I don't know, several iterations later, and you're like, yeah, this is it, $1 million. That's my software. And you refuse to sell to, you know, everybody else.
I think it's really interesting, because I think that actually with you saying those things, I think that it's quite interesting about how it's your relationship with the brand and the product that determines whether or not you think it's quality.
Yeah.
And perhaps an interesting example of this is that most of the music streaming services do not appear to be luxury brands.
Yeah.
So whether or not you use Spotify or you use Apple Music, you know, you've got your choices of these different platforms now, and they're all very utilitarian and deliver identical services, really. However, Calm, the app, for meditation and stuff, that does feel to me like a luxury purchase. Now, maybe it's because I don't have to have it. Maybe it's because the way they present the interface, or the way they position it, or the way they talk about it. But that does feel like much more of a quality product, even though it's A, not expensive, and B, not restricted in use in any way at all, because everyone in the world could download it if they chose to.
I think you've hit on an amazing point there about luxury being personal. Lots of people have tried over for hundreds of years to try and define luxury. Is a state of ease, state of comfort, blah, 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 blah. It's opulence, it's spending money, it's whatever. But I think once you get into the digital age, or once you get into things that didn't exist before, luxury goods or products or whatever, then it's a bit more difficult to define. So for example, what if you had the Calm app and you had the option of choosing the voice of your favorite actor or actress to read those affirmations to you? Would that be more of a luxury service? Or if you're listening to Spotify and before each track you have the artist who sings on the song saying, this is what I was going through when I wrote this song, this is why I did this, blah, 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 blah. Again, we're talking added value. Will that be more of a luxury product? If you're able to access, and again, this might be possible through AI, who knows? If you're able to access this particular digital twin of this celebrity that has been cloned, obviously licensed, blah, blah, blah. So my point is, I think it's about thinking beyond the very obvious of what we think luxury is, as we go more and more and more into products that probably didn't exist way before luxury goods, etc., were created.
I think Calm is an interesting one because there's a charge, isn't it? There's an annual charge. So it's not like Facebook where you get it for free.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing about that was that they went to organizations like American Express, which would be deemed as being more of a luxury credit card.
Yeah.
So you could get it if you could get it free with a code from American Express. So there was clearly some thought there in the Calm branding department about the type of person that they wanted to use it.
Exactly. So people with money, because ultimately, when it comes to anything luxury, that is the aim. Really, you want to sell to your ideal target person, and it's somebody with money. But it's how you get them to part with the money. That is the interesting thing, depending on who they are and depending on what's motivating them to buy from you. Yesterday, somebody was talking about now organizations are not just talking about mental health anymore. They're not talking about organizational health. Mental health issues in the workplace would have been seen as a luxury even 10 years ago. Now it's part of organizations are saying, actually, it's not just employees separate. Mental health is now part of organizational health. And they're putting in metrics and measures. So is that luxury? Who knows?
Many years ago, Adam and I went to see a luxury. It was a designer who was starting up. And he had a place not far from Harrods in London. So I did what I would normally do before I go to the meeting. I thought I'd read up on luxury brands because I certainly wasn't an expert, and so I found the top 10 things for doing with luxury brands. Within 2 minutes of getting into the meeting, it was very clear that all of those 10 things were wrong, and everything that you would have done for taking to market a box of soap powder was completely the opposite.
That's right.
So this person had the average person spent £20,000 when they came to it. He didn't have any shops. It was you had to be referred, and one of his problems was that nobody would refer, not because it was bad, but because what they were expecting was that daughter would go and mum would go, or mom would go and daughter would go. But because the stuff was so exclusive, they would say, I'm not referring anybody because I'm going to be the only person that's going to wear this down at Gail's coffee bar. And that's where we met the person that she spent, what, £30,000? She'd flown first class to get a £30,000 bag and flown first class back again.
But when we went there, so you know, we've had some exposure to luxury products, but when we went there, they were talking about some of the clothes they had, and I said, "How much is that?" And it was a T-shirt, a white cotton T-shirt, and it was £250. And Tim and I kind of looked at each other and sort of sniggered and said, "That's a ridiculous amount of money for just a plain white T-shirt." And he said, so Hermes, that, as you know, is like one of the most expensive, highest quality brands there is. He said the quality of this material is so expensive that Hermes cannot afford to buy this. And then he passed the T-shirt to us to feel, and it was just, I have never felt it was just cotton. I've never felt a material like this. It was just breathtaking. And, you know, when you experience that sort of thing, you think, okay, now I see what the difference is. It's like people that say, you know, I can't tell the difference between good wine and expensive and cheap wine. Well, that's because you've not ever had good wine. Yeah. And if you do, everybody can tell the difference, whether you're a connoisseur or not.
I love that. You've used the word experience. And I think that is a really crucial thing when it comes to luxury buyers, because the experience of something, once they've bought a certain brand or they've fallen in love with a certain brand, it's difficult for them to go back and not be with that brand. So again, it's about the experience, the brand loyalty that creates, and that really emotional resonance. So I'm sure you're talking about that T-shirt, and it's one that you've never forgotten, and is an experience that's been very, very memorable. And that's one thing I say all the time. It's not a matter of, oh, that was expensive and you walked away, but you felt it and it was like, wow, now I get it. So that experience is absolutely crucial to luxury.
He had there was a pashmina scarf that he had, which and it was £1,000 for a scarf.
Yeah.
And I said to him, "Oh, I bet this is made from sustainable material." He said, "No, we actually make it from an animal which is endangered." Which goes back to your point earlier on, which is that sometimes it's about sustainability and sometimes it's not.
Yeah, absolutely.
And by the way, that rings a bell now. So,
well, you've gone.
What are the biggest challenges that luxury brand need to overcome today, from your perspective, Elizabeth?
Oh, okay. No, there plenty.
That might be one.
Plenty, but the main one is around credibility and authenticity. So if you are producing with no thought or no care, and you're moving away from your own values, because you're saying, okay, we're exclusive and we're this and that. I mean, you mentioned earlier, for example, the guy said, oh, even this cotton is too expensive for Hermes, right? Now, everyone expects that the highest quality, that this is that, the other. And then you discover that's not quite the case. So there are credibility issues cropping up for a number. All you have to do is go to certain forums online, and you have very dissatisfied customers saying, I bought this, money's going up, but the quality is shocking for what it is. You know, why am I buying this logo? And people begin to question. That is a massive thing that they need to overcome. Another thing that luxury brands need to overcome right now is retaining, and this is a really tricky thing, retaining the clients with money, so boomers, Gen X's, while at the same time trying to appeal to the Gen Zs and the millennials, because some brands have done themselves a disservice by ignoring the older demographics, and they're running after the younger and they're getting it badly wrong. It's like saying, hello kids, I'm cool too. No, you don't do
Jaguar.
that. Yeah, exactly. So, you don't do that. So I think that is a challenge as well, because in the workplace right now, according to studies, there are 5 generations in a workplace. So that makes the workplace very interesting. And it makes brands also very jittery, because they're thinking, okay, what do we do for the best? But the cool brands, the brands that Gen Zs actually love, are using older people in their advertising or promotion, etc. So it's all about getting the balance right. So I would say credibility, appealing to a number of generations, and also things around ethics and sustainability, if I can say so, small, ethics and sustainability, because some of the practices are shocking. The Italian police raided a factory that made handbags from a certain brand, found slave labor, found that the bags were made for, I don't know, a few dollars compared to the thousands it was sold for. So those are some of the challenges that they need. And also you've also got the flatlining of luxury as well. So they need to sell more to maintain position, but at the same time be mindful of the economic reality of a number of people.
I wanted to bring up a comment from Jonathan Young. He says, can you please go back to building a luxury brand Elizabeth wanted to do a few minutes ago? I'd love to see you guys go through the process. And Jonathan, so would I. However, because this is just a come as you are, very casual conversation, we went off in a completely different direction. And just like that, we've sort of run out of time.
Sorry, Jonathan.
Sorry, Jonathan.
You need to come back, Elizabeth, and we'll play again.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Along those lines, Elizabeth, this has been great. How can people learn more? Where can they get in touch with you?
Okay, I'm on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is I love LinkedIn. I'm also on TikTok occasionally and on Instagram, but LinkedIn, connect with me on LinkedIn. Every day I post something around luxury, lessons, and I use topical issues. But more importantly, get my book from Amazon. And I take you through the brand building process, Jonathan, in the book. So yeah.
Hold one of your books up, Elizabeth, so we can see it.
Thank you.
There we go.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.
We now have a newsletter. Don't miss an episode. Get show highlights, beyond the show insights, and reminders of upcoming episodes. You can scan the QR code on screen or visit us at digitaldownload.live/newsletter. On behalf of the panelists, to our guest, Elizabeth, to our audience, thank you all for being an active part in today's digital download, and we'll see you next time.
Bye everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.